At 85, Tony Curtis confesses, "She wastes the only one who could do that to me." Tony Curtis was born Bernard Schwartz on June 3, 1925 in the Bronx, New York, to parents who came from Hungary. His child was filled with tough times. His father, Emanuel Schwartz, was a tailor and his mom Helen had problems with her mental health. The family didn't have much money, and Curtis often talked about going hungry and wearing clothes that didn't fit right. But from a young age, he really wanted to escape those hard times and make something amazing out of his life. Movies became his safe place, a world of fancy things and escape that he really wanted to join. As a teenager, Curtis joined a local neighborhood gang, but his life changed when World War II started. He joined the US Navy in 1943 and worked on a submarine helper ship in the Pacific Ocean. This time, he later said, taught him how to be disciplined and gave him a bigger view of life beyond the Bronx. When the war ended, Curtis used the GI Bill to study acting at the dramatic workshop of the New School in New York City. It was there that he practiced his skills, choosing the stage name Tony Curtis, a name he felt sounded fancy and like a movie star. By the late 1940s, Curtis's amazing good looks, dark hair, and cool charm got the attention of Universal Pictures, which gave him a contract. Hollywood right away took notice. Even though his early roles were small and often just playing handsome soldiers or small-time bad guys, Curtis's star power was obvious. He worked really hard to get better at acting, wanting to prove that he was more than just a good-looking face. His big break came in the early 1950s with movies like Winchester 73 from 1950, where he appeared next to James Stewart and Son of Folly, Baba from 1952, which helped make him a leading man. As the 1950s went on, Tony Curtis became one of Universal's biggest moneymakers. His mix of charm, humor, and realness connected with audiences. He starred in a bunch of hit movies, including Houdini from 1953, acting with his first wife, Janet Leigh. The couple became one of Hollywood's perfect pairs. Beautiful, talented, and loved by fans. Their marriage gave them 2 daughters, including actress Jamie Lee Curtis, who would later continue her father's movie star legacy. But behind the glamour, their relationship had problems because of fame, long times apart, and Curtis's rowing dreams. Curtis's career reached new artistic points in the late 1950s and early 1960s. His performance in Sweet Smell of Sussex from 1957. Acting with Burt Lancaster was amazing, a dark, serious role that proved he could do dramatic acting. He followed that with The Defiant Ones from 1958, acting with Sidney Poitier, a powerful movie about racial problems and human strength. Curtis got an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, a moment that proved his years of hard work and wish to be taken seriously as an actor. Then came Some Like It Hot from 1959, the movie that made him legendary. Directed by Billy Wilder and also starring Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon, the comedy is still one of Hollywood's great must-movies. Curtis's quick jokes, funny timing, and perfect chemistry with his co-stars made the film Adam's favorite. He later joked about this famous kiss on screen with Monroe, saying that kissing Marilyn was like kissing Hitler. A comment he later said was just playful joking, but anyway, the movie made sure his legacy as both a comedy genius and a screen icon stayed forever. Throughout the 1960s, Curtis kept taking on different roles from adventure movies like Spartacus from 1960 to stylish comedies Suches, Operation Petticoat from 1959, and The Great Race from 1965. His charm was natural, his style perfect. However, as the movie studio system changed and younger stars showed up, Curtis saw fewer major roles come his way. Still, he made himself new through character acting, appearances, and a deep love for painting, a talent that became a big part of his later life. Tony Curtis's love life was as colorful and dramatic as the movies that made him a Hollywood icon. Over his whole life, he got married 6 times, each relationship showing a different side of his complicated personality and his constant search for lasting love. His marriages were often what the public found fascinating, mixed with the glamour and craziness of his movie star life. His first marriage to the gorgeous and talented actress Janet Leigh started in 1951 when both their careers were at their peak. Leigh was already a rising star working with MGM, and Curtis, who was a handsome young actor with Universal International, was quickly becoming one of Hollywood's most wanted leading men. Their marriage was a true Hollywood power couple match. to beautiful people whose on-screen coolness matched their off-screen charm. Even though studio bosses gave warnings who worried marriage might ruin his heartthrob image, Curtis followed his heart. The marriage gave them two daughters, including future actress Jamie Lee Curtis, who would later become a star herself. However, the glamour of Hollywood life was hard on them. Both were caught up in their careers, spending long times apart filming on different continents. The stress of fame, along with Curtis's cheating and the temptation all around him, slowly broke their bond. After more than 10 years of marriage, they divorced in 1962, ending one of the most famous marriages in Hollywood's golden time. Curtis found love again soon after with Kristen Hoffman, a beautiful 17-year-old German actress who he met while filming Taurus Bulba in 1962. Their relationship caused a lot of talk because Curtis was 38 at the time, more than twice her age. Despite the gossip, the mystery was real. They married in 1963, and Kaufman became not only his wife, but also his connection to a new European fan group. They had two daughters together, but their marriage didn't last long. By 1968, their relationship had fallen apart because of Curtis's non-stop work schedule and his problems with fame and addiction. Kaufman would later speak nicely of him, saying she never stopped loving him even after their divorce. In 1968, Curtis started his third marriage, this time to Leslie Allen, a young model and actress who wanted to make it big. This marriage, which lasted until 1982, was one of his more steady relationships, going on for 14 years, longer than any of his past marriages. They had 2 sons together, and during this time, Curtis was moving into more grown-up film roles and TV appearances. However, the problems that had haunted him, fame, restlessness, and a constant need for excitement, once again, came back. By the early 1980s, his relationship with Allen started to fall apart and the marriage ended in divorce. In 1984, Curtis married Andrea Savio, an actress and former ice skater who was more than 40 years younger than him. Their relationship was passionate but rocky, marked by Curtis's continued battles with drug and alcohol problems and health issues. Even though they shared a deep love, the huge age difference and different lifestyles eventually made their relationship impossible to keep going after 8 years of marriage. They divorced in 1992. A year later, in 1993, Curtis married Lisa Deutsch, a young lawyer. However, this fifth marriage was really brief, lasting barely a year. Curtis later admitted that the relationship had been rushed, a decision made more because he felt lonely and his lifelong fear of being alone than real compatibility. Finally, in 1998, Tony Curtis found lasting friendship with Jill Vandenberg, a horse trainer and charity worker who was 45 years younger than him. Their age gap made people raise their eyebrows, but by this time in his life, Curtis seemed to have found peace. The couple moved to Nevada where they shared a love of animals and started together the Shiloh Horse Rescue, a place for abused and neglected horses. Jill stayed devoted to him until his death in 2010, and Curtis often said she brought stability and happiness to his later years. When Tony Curtis reached the age of 85, he had lived a life filled with fame, heartbreak, starting over, and thinking back. The movie Steradol, who once captured hearts in the 1950s and 1960 seconds, was no longer the handsome young star of some like it Hodor the Defiant Ones. But he had never lost his charm or his honesty. In his later years, Curtis became really honest about his life and the women who had shaped it. Among them all, one name stood out: Marilyn Monroe. Speaking with heaviness of age and the clearness that comes only after many years of soul searching, Curtis once admitted she was the only one who could do that tome. Those words showed more than just looking back fondly. They spoke of a deep emotional connection that had bethexed and troubled him. Tony Curtis and Marilyn Monroe first met when both were rising stars in Hollywood. Curtis, the handsome, fast-talking young actor from the Bronx, and Monroe, the glowing blonde, whose innocence and sexiness fascinated the world, seemed pulled together by an unspoken understanding of each other's dreams and weaknesses. They both came from difficult beginnings. Curtis, the son of poor Hungarian immigrants, and Monroe, an orphan who had gone through instability and loneliness. Underneath the glamour and the studio-controlled images, both wanted love, approval, and escape. Their paths crossed many times before they worked together. But it was during the filming of Some Like It Hot in 1958 that their relationship reached its most complicated and intense point. The film, now considered one of the greatest comedies ever made, paired Curtis and Monroe in scenes filled with humor, chemistry, and tension. Off the set, the two shared a tangled story. Years earlier, before Monroe's marriage to Joe DiMaggio and later to Arthur Miller, she and Curtis had a passionate love affair. It was secret, quick, and complicated by the pressures of fame and studio politics, but the connection stayed. When Curtis was cast next to Monroe in Some Like It Hot, the old feelings came back. But so did the frustrations. Monroe's emotional fragility and legendary lateness on set tested Deverian's patience, including Curtis's. It was like kissing Hitler. He famously joked when asked about Tyrant's screen kisses. A remark he later admitted was said in anger, not truth. Many years later, he confessed, "I was wrong to say that. I said it because I was frustrated." The truth is, Marilyn was mesmerizing. She had this power over men. Not just because she was beautiful, but because she was vulnerable. You wanted to protect her even when she drove you crazy. In his final years, Curtis often spoke about Monroe not as an icon, but as a woman he once knew, fragile, brilliant, and haunted. He described how she could switch from bright joy to deep sadness in seconds, how her laughter could light up a room, and how her loneliness was never far behind her smile. There was something about Marilyn that got inside you, he said quietly in one interview. You couldn't forget her. I never did. Their affair, though long past, left a permanent mark on Curtis. Even after multiple marriages and countless romances, he still thought of Monroe as a one-of-a-kind presence in his life. She was the only one who could do it to me, he admitted, talking not only about the emotional pain she caused, but also about the tenderness she brought out in him. Monroe's combination of vulnerability and sexiness disarmed him in a way neither woman could. She reminded him of the pain and beauty of being human, something that even fame and fortune could never erase. When Curtis thought about his past, Hefton wondered what might have been if things were different. Heck knew that both he and Monroe were too damaged, too ambitious, and too controlled by Hollywood's machinery to find peace together. We were two lost souls trying to find our way, he thought. Maybe that's why we connected and why it couldn't last. By the time of his confession at 85, Curtis had made peace with many of the hosts of his past. He had seen Empress of Fame rise and fall, had weathered scandal, addiction, and starting over, but when he spoke of Marilyn, his voice carried a tenderness that time could not make dull. She wasn't perfect, he said, but she was unforgettable. Every man who knew her fell in love with her a little. And I think she knew it. Curtis's final thoughts on Monroe were not those of a bitter old man, but of someone who had finally come to understand the depth of their shared humanity. Behind the movie star faces were two people wanting acceptance, bathing from their pain in the bright lights of Hollywood. She was the only one who could do that. Me, Tony Curtis said again quietly. And in that confession was a lifetime of love, regret, and memory. Proof that even in a world built on pretend, some connections are forever real. Rumors long continued that their on-screen passion had spilled over into real life, and in his later years, Curtis admitted it was true. We were lovers. Yes, hesitate. We found each other in the middle of all that craziness. It wasn't a grand love affair. Not that you write about in books, but it was real, and for a time it was everything. He claimed their affair continued quietly even while Marilyn was married, and that their connection was driven not by lust, but by a shared pain for understanding. She could reach inside me and touch something no one else could. Maybe it was because she was as broken as I was. Tony also revealed that Marilyn had become pregnant during their affair, a claim that shocked Hollywood historians when he made it public many years later. She told me she was carrying my baby, he said, his voice shaking with the weight of time. But she lost it, and never knew how to comfort her. We didn't talk about it after that. We just drifted apart. Whether that sad claim was true or made bigger by memory, it was clear that for Curtis, the emotional wound stayed open. When Marilyn Monroe died in 1962, Tony Curtis was heartbroken. I cried for her, he admitted. I didn't go to the funeral because I couldn't bear it. I didn't want to see her in a coffin. She was light, pure, golden light, and I wanted to remember her that way. For the rest of his life, he carried both the guilt and the tenderness of their connection. He married 6 times, loved many women, yet no one ever seemed to fill the space Marilyn had once taken up. Looking back, Tony Curtis knew their story was one of Hollywood's most bittersweet legends. 2 stars burning too brightly, too briefly in a world that demanded perfection and punished humanity. She had the power to make me feel aliviant, to destroy me too," he said near the end of his life. "That's what I mean when I said she was the only one who could do that to me. No one else ever had that kind of hold over me heart, and in that quiet confession." At 85 years old, the actor who had once been Hollywood's golden boy revealed that underneath the fame, the laughter, and the countless roles, Tony Curtis had never truly stopped loving Marilyn Monroe.